What is up, guys? Rob here. As you guys can see, there's no Tiz this week, and that's actually why I'm making this video. I have a confession to make. I've killed Tiz. I'm just kidding. Tiz is fine, I swear. Well, at least I hope he's fine. The last I talked to him was this morning, so all bets are off from there on out, I guess. But no, I'm just messing around. Me and Tiz just had a little bit of a scheduling conflict this week, and considering that UFC Kansas City was a pretty big deal in the MMA world, I figured I'd hop on here to do a solo podcast real quick rather than doing no podcast at all this week. So let's just hop into this, right? Let's talk about the main event. Garry defeats Carlos Prates via unanimous decision, 248-47 scorecards and 149-46. Really interesting fight between two rising stars at 170 pounds. But before we get into the fight, I really just want to give credit to both of these guys for even taking this fight, because nowadays, especially in the UFC, we see a lot of fighters who take a more strategic or cautious path to go through the rankings. These guys are not doing that. They both have just fought each other, obviously, so that's a big deal. Two killers at 170. And yeah, just shout out to both of them for taking this fight. But let's get into the fight itself. I'll get into what I think about Carlos Prates and his strategy in a second, but first of all, you have to talk about Garry's striking. I mean, he's such an excellent striker. I want to start with his movement because I think that's really where he won this fight. Because Carlos Prates, he was pressuring him, right? Exactly like we thought he was going to do, but he wasn't throwing much for whatever reason. And because of that, Garry was able to read his timing pretty early, and he was able to really just get on his bike, move around on the outside, circle the cage, and counter. And he did so well in that aspect. And I really do wonder what would have happened if Carlos Prates had the same volume and urgency that he had in round 5. Maybe if he had that throughout the whole fight, it could have gone a little differently, but that's neither here nor there. It went the way it went. Garry looked great on the feet. I mean, his speed is just insane in both his hands and his legs. He's excellent defensively. He's very elusive, and I think that's part of the reason why Carlos Prates was kind of cautious with how he was throwing, because Garry's the type of fighter, if you miss, he's going to make you pay for it. And, you have to wonder if it was part of that, or maybe if it was partially because this is a 5-round fight against a top caliber welterweight. So maybe Carlos Prates was maybe trying to preserve that cardio a bit more. But like I said, Garry, he's such an excellent striker. And when you have a guy like Carlos Prates, you really were wondering going in, is Garry going to be able to deal with the pressure and the onslaught that Prates had? Well, he dealt with the pressure, but the onslaught never really came until the 5th round. And because of that, Garry was able to win this fight handily. And in my opinion, I had it 49-46. That's obviously how one of the 3 judges scores. One of the 3 judges had it. And yeah, I just think it really comes down to Garry's movement and the fact that Carlos Prates just didn't have enough output until way too late. And I think that this was a really impressive performance from Garry, because to go in there on relatively short notice, too, and fight a killer like Carlos Prates and to win it as handily as he won it, man, that's really awesome. And he's a dog. He's not afraid to fight anybody. And the thing is, now that he has another win over a really hyped-up contender, I mean, I think Prates had a 10-fight finish streak going, which is nuts. But now Garry is right back into the title conversation. And right now at welterweight, we're starting to see this changing of the guard like we are in every division really now in the UFC. But, right now we have Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 315. According to Dana White, Garry is going to be the backup for that fight. But even besides that, there's so many options right now at welterweight, because Shavkat is still out there. Obviously, right now he's hurt, or else he'd probably be getting the title shot. Sean Brady's still out there. Joaquin Buckley's still out there, although now he just got a fight booked versus Kamaru Usman. But Garry, he wants that title shot next, one way or another. He thinks that Belal is going to beat JDM, and he said his 3-fight plan. He wants to fight Belal, then fight Islam Makhachev, and then get that fight back versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. And that's not out of the realm of possibility. I think that the UFC right now is really waiting for UFC 315 to take place, because I think that that'll make everything clear, not only at 170, but also 155, because you're hearing these rumors right now that Islam Makhachev might just go up to 170 and fight Bilal Muhammad if he wins this fight against JDM. And that's really not out of the realm of possibility. I think that the clear fight to make at 155 right now would be Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. But if they don't make that, it would be interesting to see Islam go up to 170. And I think that they're waiting to see how UFC 315 goes to kind of figure out the future for both of those divisions. And I think that's when we'll get more closure on what happens with Ian Garry. But he's in a legendary spot right now. Obviously, being the backup for the title fight is great. And he really earned it. It was a good win over a really high caliber opponent in Carlos Prates. And before I move on to the co-main event, I do just got to say this about Carlos Prates. He went all 5 rounds, and he had a really big moment there at the very end. Hurt Ian Garry very bad, almost got him out of there. But his cardio wasn't too bad over 5 rounds for a guy who probably is a chain smoker from what we've been told by him. So if he has cardio that's that good while being a chain smoker, imagine the cardio that he'd have without it. But that's just my 2 cents on that. But, all jokes aside, I think Carlos Prates is going to be back. He's such a good fighter, man. And Ian Garry obviously gets a really huge win here and is right back in the driver's seat for a title shot. And that was a really big deal. What's up, guys? Sorry to interrupt the podcast real quick, but we have a message for you guys.
If you enjoy her Hamburg's content, you want to see more, consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the videos, all sorts of fight content as much as possible, podcasts, interviews, vlogs. We have it all over here, so thank you, appreciate it.
We appreciate you, and like he said, please subscribe. And now, back to the show. But let's move on to the co-main event, talking about Zhang versus Anthony Smith in Anthony Smith's final fight. And, this was a bit bittersweet because it was really awesome to see Zhang get a win over a really high caliber opponent, Anthony Smith. And I know people love to hate on Anthony Smith for some of the stuff that he says, and I get it. He's full of hot takes sometimes. Some of them are good, some of them are not that great. But, he's entitled to his opinion, obviously, considering what he's done in this sport. 60 pro fights, that's just, I can't even fathom that. But yeah, the fight did not go Anthony Smith's way. Zhang brutally TKOs him in the first round. And, it's great for Zhang, gets a big win over a big name, and now he'll be moving forward in the 205-pound division. He called out Yuri Prochazka. Not sure how likely that matchup would be, but good call out nonetheless. But I think this moment was really about Anthony Smith. Win or lose, we knew it was his final fight. And like I said, 60 pro fights. He's been in the UFC for what feels like an eternity now. He's really been in the game for such a long time. And it's, I don't know. I question why the UFC gave him such an underrated, really good fighter in his final fight rather than maybe like another guy who's at a similar point in his career. But nonetheless, Anthony Smith, he lives up to his name, Lionheart. He took this fight and he gave it his best shot. Zhang's a really good fighter, so you can't really hate on it. I think Anthony Smith's strategy, I think he was really trying to get this fight to the ground because on the feet it really was not close. But Anthony Smith just really couldn't get it there. But shout out to him, though. He's had such a legendary career, honestly. He's had some really big wins. And let's not forget how close this man was to becoming champion. He could have taken the easy way out against John Jones when he got hit with that illegal knee at UFC 235. He didn't. He said, that's not the way I would have wanted to win that title. And he kept fighting. He said he knew he could have kept fighting and he wouldn't have been able to live with that if that is how he won the belt. And that's just, how could you hate that? I don't understand how people hate this guy so much because that's such an honorable thing to do. Think about all of the money that he could have made by just taking that easy out in that fight, but he didn't do it. And then I think about Anthony Smith too in the beginning of his UFC run. He was really just a good kickboxer and his ground game was, wasn't that terrible, but it wasn't really that great. But he turned himself into such a well-rounded mixed martial artist. He was already a really good kickboxer, but then he rounded out his game with some good wrestling, and then his jiu-jitsu really became elite towards the end of his career. I was I don't know. I didn't know how I was going to feel about this fight coming in. I didn't really love the matchup, like I said, because anytime you see a fighter that's kind of like already half in, half out, and then you put him up against a rising star, it's a bit of a puzzling move. But like I said, Anthony Smith took the fight, and it didn't go his way in the fight itself, but after the fight, I mean, that tribute video they gave him was just outstanding. I mean, what a moment that was, honestly, in Kansas City. And yeah, I mean, just to see Anthony Smith standing there with his family. I mean, the thing is, in MMA, not a lot of fighters get to go out like that. And I know that he didn't win the fight, but a lot of them don't have a chance to go out on their terms, is what I'm saying. And Anthony Smith was able to do that, even though he obviously went on a loss. So I just want to say shout out to Anthony Smith, for everything he's done in his career. And, it sucks a little bit for Zhang because he got a big win and it's kind of overshadowed by this beautiful moment post-fight for Anthony Smith. But nonetheless, it's a big win for him over a big-name opponent, and I'm hoping we'll see a lot more of him through the ranks at 205. But this card really had just so many crazy moments on it, and I don't want to get into all of them that much because, it is a solo pod. I'm literally just talking to the camera, talking to you guys directly rather than Tiz. But I mean, there's so many different moments. I mean, Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby. I mean, that was a fight that I was super amped for going in because stylistically, that was a fight that was just always going to be a car crash. And it was a really fun one leading up until the knockout. And Randy Brown, that might be knockout of the year. Can we say that? That might be knockout of the year. That was a really impressive finish. But then also, like, there were a bunch of different really good fights on this. I mean, Ikram Aliskerov knocked out Andre Muniz. That was a really sick one. David Onama, he really impressed me against Giga Chikadze. I think that Onama's physical tools in the cage are just really impressive. And to do what he just did against such a technical kickboxer like Giga, super impressive. Abus Magomedov got a win over Michel Pereira. That was a really nice one. Just really fun card, honestly, in Kansas City. I wish Tiz was here to talk about it with me. Me and him actually, we did watch it together. And believe it or not, me and him used to watch these fights together almost every single weekend by our friend Sean's house. Shout out Sean. But yeah, we haven't been able to do it as much just because, work life gets in the way. But obviously we still watch them and we come in here and talk about it with you guys. But yeah, besides the UFC London fight companion that we did, me and Tiz really haven't watched fights for fun together in a really long time. So it was fun to go out and watch the fights with Tiz, and then I rewatched them on my own, obviously, to prepare even more for this podcast. And it was a fun time, really fun card. I was super excited about this one going in, considering that a lot of the fight nights nowadays, they aren't really that deep. And then I look at this card that morning, Saturday morning, and I see that literally from the first prelim to the main event, it's just all really good matchups. And I think that this card really lived up to the hype. A lot of fun moments, fun fights, and then the main event, it's a really important fight, and we learned a lot about both guys. And yeah, it was super fun, super fun. But let's talk a little bit about next show. Next week, we have Corey Sandhagen versus Davison Figueiredo. That's going to be a really fun main event. Another really fun card. So we'll be back next week talking about it. Tiz will be here. I swear, like I said, I am innocent. I did not do anything to him. He is very safe. No, I'm really just messing around. We'll see you guys next week, me and Tiz. So yeah, we'll see y'all talking about Sandhagen and Figgy.